If they're still in your LEA, then submit a historical update request. To submit an S1X, you'll create a new enrollment record for the student in SY 2025 with the updates that need to be done, and submit it with a resident status of X with 0 membership. And then just make sure that the entry and exit dates are within a couple days, first couple of days of the year. You have from the end of July through the October 1 submission again, which is October 7th, to make any updates to your 2024 graduation rate data. Yep. And as I already stated, the final graduation rate will be run after that point and published around December. Okay, next slide. This is just a reminder that the 2 different ways you can look at the data. The graduation preview report will happen after we've run the preliminary, and then there's the graduation rate for 4-year report. It's on the data gateway, and it's updated after each submission, but it's not live. So as you submit changes, you won't see that necessarily on the report. Next slide. For any changes that you've made, and you want to know if it was actually made it through, you can reach out to myself or to Callista, and we can, well, when Callista's back, that is, we can try to answer your questions. And that's all that I have. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
All righty, thanks, David. I will be going over membership proration and guidance. And personally, it's a little confusing to me how all this works. And so if you find yourself having questions, don't worry. I don't get all of it either. So we'll do our best and go through this together. So we can go to the next slide. So the membership rules are in Board Rule R277-419. It's under the Student Membership Calculations heading, and you can find it linked in the slides after we send them out, so you can read through all of it. The basics are that students are only allowed to have 180 days of regular membership per year, with a few exceptions. And then starting many years ago, the board rule has been enforced through membership proration applied to year-end data after it's uploaded through UTREX into the USB data warehouse. So the board rule clarifies that a student is only eligible for 180 days of regular membership per year, with a few exceptions. One is a student who has an early graduation plan that has the early grad flag marked, and they're eligible for more than 180 days of membership. A student who transfers between LEAs is eligible for a total of 170 days plus 10 days for each LEA, and that allows for a little bit of overlap in enrollment. Another exception is a student who transfers to or from a year-round school. They're eligible up to 205 days of regular membership, both within and across LEAs if they're doing the transferring. And the student who transfers to or from the school with a schedule approved exception is eligible for up to 220 days of regular membership. If a student qualifies for more than one exception, the student will be given the exception that qualifies them for the highest allowable membership in the following order. So the early grad flag, there's no limit. The schedule exception gets you to 20 days. LEA count of 4 would get you 210 days. If they attend more than one school with one or more being year-round, that's 205 days. There's an LEA count of 3, that's 200. LEA count of 2, that's 190. And then no exceptions would be 180 days of membership. And exceptions do not get combined to increase the allowable membership. So some of the proration exclusions are that there are some records that are excluded from regular membership funding calculations and are therefore excluded from membership proration calculations. So Scram times C, YC times C, if school of record is no, preschoolers, private school or homeschool students, or foreign exchange or out of state, they're excluded from the proration. So Utrecht's membership, there's a fatal error for membership, and that is the S1.012, which prevents a student from having more than 180 days of membership within a single school, except for students with that early grad flag. If a student has an early grad plan, please make sure that the early grad flag is checked. So this will allow the student to have more than 180 days of membership within this single school. And if the student doesn't have an early grad plan, then you need to adjust the reported regular membership so it doesn't exceed 180 days. There is a level 2 warning for membership, and it's the student school membership. And this indicates when a student has more than their allowable membership across multiple LEAs. So ways to resolve this is check that the student's entry and exit dates are correct. Check that the student's membership has been calculated correctly. For example, if the student's taking half of a full schedule of classes, please make sure that the membership has been prorated to 0.5 or half of a full membership. If the student's attending multiple LEAs, check with the other LEAs to let them know that you verify that your data are correct and encourage them to do the same. So the proration in board rule from R277-419, this is current as of last year. The student membership calculations say that if a student was enrolled for only part of the school day or only part of the school year, the LEA shall prorate the student's membership according to the number of hours, periods, or credits for which the student actually was enrolled in relation to the number of hours, periods, or credits for which a full-time student normally would have been enrolled. And it provides an example. We'll go through some more examples too. So if the combined membership reported for a student exceeds their allowable membership, then USBE will prorate the membership proportionate to the amount of membership each school is that each school has submitted. And this is also in board rule where it says that the superintendent will apportion the days of regular membership allowed between LEAs. And this prorated amount will not show on Utrecht membership reports, but will be used for the MSP funding calculations. And again, this happens after the data are submitted and finalized. So there's some examples for how proration will happen. So if a student took classes from schools in 2 different LEAs, say they took 8 classes at LEA A, which is a full-time load there, LEA reports 180 days of membership. They took 2 classes at LEA B, a quarter time load for them. That would be, LEA reports 45 days of membership. If the student doesn't have an early graduation plan and no other exceptions, then the allowable membership for the student is 170 plus 2 times 10, which is 190. And currently, as submitted, the total membership for the student is 225 days, which exceeds the student's allowable 190 days of membership. So what happens is that USBE will prorate the membership proportionate to the amount of membership that each LEA submitted. So LEA A submitted 80% of the student's membership. LEA B submitted 20% of the membership. So LEA A is prorated down to 152 days. LEA B is prorated down to 38 days. And that adds to a total of 190. Another example is a student started the school year attending a year-round school in LEA A. The school year started on July 17th. Partway through the school year, they transferred to a traditional school within LEA B. LEA A reported 60 days of membership. LEA B reported 140 days for a total of 200 days. And this total is within the allowable membership for this exception. And membership will not be prorated. So the summary of the steps is that the student membership data is recorded by each LEA in compliance with people accounting rules. So know what your LEA constitutes or determines as full-time, and then enter that students proration based on what your full-time, what your LEA determines as full-time. And then before finalizing your year-end submission, each LEA verifies enrollment and membership data for students that have a student school membership level 2 validation warning. And then after all the data are loaded into USB data warehouse, the membership gets prorated as necessary to ensure that each LEA will receive their proportionate share of the allowable membership.
Hey, Riley, we have a couple questions.
Yes, so it looks like Doug's asked, how do we report our full FTE? That takes online school as well. Saying, okay, Doug and Lee are chatting. So we have a full-time student that has all our periods scheduled but enrolled in an online school as well. So I get Utrecht's errors saying that have more than 180 days of membership. As far as our LEA, we're reporting them as full FTE. Malia's confirming the online school is in a different LEA. If so, then as long as your LEA is not reporting more than 180 days of membership, you don't have to change anything. Just worry about making sure your own student's membership is being reported correctly. Thanks, Malia. And then Andrew Frank says, is there a good report we can run during the year to see what students we have in our LEA that are shared with another district? We often don't know. I don't know this on the top of my head. If Aaron does, please feel free to jump in, but we can get back to you. Okay, we will get back to you. So moving on to school membership warnings. Again, each LEA claiming membership for a dual enrolled student must make sure they're reporting accurate entry exit day and prorating the membership according to the proportion of a full course load that the student is taking at your LEA. If your data are correct, then you can ignore the school membership warning, and you should not submit incorrect data to make the validation warning go away. All right, as I said, these are sometimes confusing, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and we will do our best to help you. Calista is our membership and is our graduation guru, and as everyone knows, she's out, so we are doing our best to help. All right, turning over to Mark.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn my camera on here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Mark Waddups. I'm the USIMS student domain product owner. And just wanted to give you an update on the student backpack. I'll give you a quick overview. Some of you have attended our student focused working group, and this will be familiar with you, or familiar to you. And we'll just kind of give you an update on where we're at. Next slide, please. This is kind of a whiteboard level illustration, so I apologize for the icons and the lack of images here. But the intention here is to give those of you that aren't familiar with this an overview of what this student achievement backpack is. So per 53E-3-511, as you can see there in that student backpack box, there's legislation passed to create this student backpack. It's not a direct, it's not a one-to-one relationship, but it's very close to what, for those of you that are new to this, to a cumulative file that would move only digital, that would move with the student from LEA to LEA. There's a few exceptions, but we'll talk about that. So the first main scenario is, let's say that Johnny is moving from LEA 1 to LEA 2, and those SIS systems are different. the student achievement backpack is meant to move with the student. So if they move from one LEA to another, it moves with them. So they can, we have this kind of comprehensive file, if you will, or files that move with that student, similar to like folders would in a backpack. There are some cases too, other cases where, Johnny in my illustration may move move from one LEA to another, but may be dual enrolled, and there are scenarios like that. But the main focus of the student backpack is to allow that that data to move with the students, so that as they're newly enrolled, the intent is that an LEA can then come out and get that, make a request to get that information by a connection or a bridge like an API and get that data back. The other scenario that we have is when Johnny he may be in an existing LEA and he takes a new assessment, and that new assessment data is available. So you can see in the top right-hand corner, that's just an illustration to show that we're getting assessment data directly from the vendor and associating the high-level scores to the student backpack. So the intent would be that now an LEA can see over time a history of those assessments, namely like RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, ACT, where that's applicable, as well as Acadian's third grade reading score. So the intent is that moves with the student, and you can see their progress over time to gain insights on the student and where they may need help, all the way to just helping streamline getting that student acclimated to their new school in a new district, and many use cases in between. Any questions on that to this point? Okay, so let's, next slide, please. So this is just an update on the progress that we've made this year. What I would, the analogy I've been using, for lack of a better way to explain this, is we've spent FY24 working on the engine so that that student backpack has all the logic it needs, that engine is functioning well. And we've been able to meet our July 1 goal of being able to take one assessment in that previous slide you saw, take assessment RISE, and be able to show the capability to send RISE assessment data through to the student backpack, and allow an SIS to actually come and get that information. So in this case, it's Power School. We use that more just as a way to verify that we had that capability in place. And you can see from these slides, this is the data set that we've started with for that student backpack and have successfully created the functionality for that. Next slide, please. So here what we're showing is the actual functionality around that data that I just showed you and that I was kind of describing. So in point number 3 there, you can see that the assessment that we've just completed testing that out with one of our SIS vendors, Power School, and now in FY25, the roadmap is yet to be finalized, but we're going to be looking now to enable or take that engine and put it into the car. It doesn't really add a whole lot of value if we create a great engine and we show it works well, if we can't place it in the car and then start running the different scenarios. So for those of you who have time, I'd highly encourage you to come to our student-focused working groups to help us in FY25 maybe tease out some of the scenarios that we need to be looking at when it comes to exchanging that data, and how we can better refine the EdFi API that we have in place now for assessments. So that's the update. Any questions or any comments? we're pretty excited because we feel like this is gonna, we've also put some things in place that we'll talk about in our functional advisory board on July 10th, which if you reach out to Katrina, Brinkley, she can get you an invite to that meeting if you don't already have it. But we're going to be talking about in more detail the functionality that we actually created and how that kind of dovetails into value for each of the different LEAs. Okay, if there's no questions, that's it for me, and thank you. On to you, Cliff.
All right, thank you. So the first thing I have for you is references for eliminating errors and validations. We'll go into the next slide. So rather than try to guess and assume specific areas which you're having problems with, is there's a lot of variance across the board. My attempt at this is to bring you something that gives a little bit more transparency and insight to those errors. And also for some of you who have been doing this for a long time, one of the visibility pieces that you're going to see here on this link, which I've shared in the screenshot below for it, is that you can see when we made some of these new errors or validations effective. So if you were up to speed in December and you're just looking to see what's potentially new, this is a quick reference that's going to be able to help you see those areas, what's latest, what the details are, a little bit more than what you're going to see come through with your direct errors. Note that your direct errors are going to have fill-ins, which are going to be specific to you. What you're going to see on here is things like column name for reference, referencing like the field name where the error was found, or the column data, which is then going to say, for instance, that you gave a value, and this is what value is in place for that. So I hope that this is something that you guys can utilize and appreciate. You can give us feedback. You can email me any feedback about it, any suggestions. If you would like to see more on this, some of the other areas that this is going to be helping identify is if it's fatal, if it's a warning, the specific code for your direct reference. So you can take your overview page, come to here and cross-reference it to see if you can get any additional details about that error that it didn't give immediately for you. You can find out some of the item names as far as like the acceptable values that could be provided. And I hope that this will help with any of the problems that you have for your finalization, and that we can keep this as a shared document. This is currently shared out for anyone, anywhere. So not protected and not giving away, code information. That's the one degree which I had to be hesitant on transparency for, is going down to providing out like the SQL and things like that for how we're doing some of these validations. Individually, we can probably dig into some of that level for you if needed, if that's helpful. But yeah, let us know what you think of this and if this is helpful at all. Go ahead to the next slide. Or if anybody has any questions, feel free to get your hand raised or pop it up into chat, and I'll try to address them as we go. Next area I've got is everybody's favorite topic, at least that I speak about, is the address fields. So the address fields for the GPS and Google Plus codes. Go ahead to the next screen. So when we dug into this after our meetings where we met with some of our SISs, with some of our LEAs, we were leaning on trying to make sure that we stuck to specifications as best as we can, made this as easy and fast as possible to get implemented. One thing that has changed since those meetings were that we were hoping to just have like one field that just morphed and was used across the board for anything And some of the feedback that we also had for takeaway from the meeting was just that trying to reuse something for many purposes isn't very clean, and it's not very straightforward, and it takes training and extra work for everybody involved. So we've gone with looking back to our SIF standards for the fields, and there already exists a latitude and longitude. So this should be beneficial for your technical teams in implementing out these two fields, as they are per spec for the last 10 plus years. So I hope that that helps on that regard. As far as that we are still looking to allow this through address line 1, that's a functionality that we're trying to give you for a window for testing in between now and October 1st. That's when the deadline is in the October finalizer for having all of these values to where there is a way to find a correct value for matching up with an address. We're not changing this with the current finalizer period. We're not changing this right after the finalizer period. Our intent is to keep this as it is for now into at least September, to be able to provide you the opportunity to get students loaded and assessed without having this become a complication. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead on that for the time frame for it, but hopefully that adds a little bit of relief in the concept, that you will continue to be able to see if it works with your physical address line 1 as your SIS is developing out the ability to support the new fields, GPS latitude, GPS longitude, or the field geocode. The geocode at this point in time is specifically just referencing out the Google Plus code. Over time, that may be something that grows or changes. So we didn't want to name brand that field to just one value, but that is what the geocode is going to be able to take, is your plus codes. We did get feedback about trying to build it up to support the short code instead of the full code. The short code, as I've talked about in previous meetings, allows you to drop off for the characters in the Google Plus code at the very beginning, as long as you have like the city, state, and zip. Like I said, we are looking to implement that out and have that in place for October 1st, but that isn't a functionality we have testable right now for you on the physical address line 1. But when we do get this released out before October 1st, that will definitely be in place to give that full ability to use a short code if that's what you have. It can take the short code or the long code. And to do this, we essentially look up the code for your city and then preface that on top of the short code. And that's how that process works. So getting into the next area, we've got the associated validations. We're trying to help make sure that this works for you and that you can get as much feedback about why it didn't work. So we've got a handful of different warnings here for you. Each one just goes into some of the logical aspects that kind of points you into, well, this value isn't really logical, that, the latitude has to be within a -90 and 90 degrees. If the number is not in that range, it's just not real. It's not an actual latitude that's an acceptable GPS. Then the next one is specifically for Utah itself. The other is like the entire planet. This next one is down to Utah itself. And this warning will say essentially that it's not within the range of Utah. And that's the latitude ranges for Utah. And then we have similar for the longitude and also for the state of Utah for the longitude. So hopefully those again will help guide and direct if there's any problems with the GPSs that you're being provided. and an ability to quickly share that same feedback that we're able to give you about, well, why doesn't this one work? Then we also have just the generalistic pieces here about the data type, ensuring the length of the values. And then finally, at the last here, we have one that validates the provided geocode, that it has to look and feel and be able to load like a Google Plus code. None of these will be fatal. All of these are educational for warning. The address validations, the requirement isn't actually directly on the field themselves. The part that fails is the district of residence and not being able to have a valid address. So this is the direct data. So not to give you too much relief there, the requirement hasn't gone away that you have to have a valid address. And we have to be able to find a way to have a valid address. All this is an attempt that can be accepted and a useful way to be able to not have a street address. And the reasons for that can be, it's a brand new student, it's a brand new home, that there isn't a valid address that's been reported out to the Utah GRC for, or it's a address that is in a remote location and there just isn't a street address for it. Those students now have another option for being able to get into the system. As far as with students out of state, it all depends on what you have for residency. If you have them in for residency that say that they're in Utah, they must be in Utah. There's no exception to that. If they're marked with a residency that says that they're not in Utah, they can live anywhere. It's not controlled with that. So we're only checking the valid address pieces within Utah against students who are marked to be in Utah for residency. Did that address your concern, Stacy, or do you want to speak up and add anything to that? Okay. Great. Yeah, and if anybody does have any strong concerns, feel free to continue to reach out to myself or Aaron. We're happy to try to get together, make a meeting if needed, to make sure that people have a clear plan as far as how to address this state requirement and to be able to do it efficiently. All right, so timing, like I said, I jumped ahead a little bit here on this. Currently, the physical address line 1 is still an acceptable means to test it, to where you can have an idea of if it works. I will say that there is about 50 lookups which we have regarding with our Google Plus codes, where there's some cached information that we won't be able to clear out until the start of the new school year. So potentially you may have a few which aren't coming through clearly. I would say if you try it on a different student, you may see a new result that works better. As again, there are a few that about 50 across the state that we have cache that we're not going to be able to clear out until the start of the new school year, which we are hoping to have in between July 15th and August 1st. So we always try to aim for as quickly as we can in that time frame, and we'll try to keep you in sync with if we can get a sooner than August 1st time frame. Okay. Then, sorry, if you go back a page, I'm not sure if I hit the start of the next school year. Start of the next school year, initially you're going to have right off the bat, the 3 geospatial fields are going to be available, and that we will still maintain that physical address line lookup for the time that's needed to bring SISs on board to using the 3 new fields. Once we have everybody that's on board with that, we'll deprecate out that lookup through physical address line 1, as we got plenty of feedback that reusing fields for more than one thing isn't a great concept. And we agree with that, and we're going to try to get that focused as soon as possible. The updates and fixes applied, that's kind of what I'd mentioned about of like clearing out those 50 We also have a few other updates that we're doing internally between now and then, which will be clearing up. And we'll also be looking for any further feedback that we get and making sure that those are addressed prior to October. And as much as we can, again, prior to September, to where you're not having any students prevented from loading if we can prevent it. You know, we're going to try to implement any feedback that we get as quickly as we can to ensure that this doesn't come as a preventer for loading any students. And again, for now, those validations are just warnings, and they'll become non-loading errors or fatal errors by October, potentially in September. Go to the next slide. Okay, we got a question. When I read the physical address requirement, it sounds like you were asking us to put the GPS coordinates or Google Plus code in line 1. Is that correct? You can for now. The point of the 3 new fields is it's a replacement which is focused for that purpose. But if you want to see how those work right now, when we first started talking about this a few months ago, before we started getting your feedback, we had already designed it to start working with line 1. So we are shifting, but we're wanting to not shift so fast that, you know, you lose the ability to check it at all. So we're going to keep that around for now. Did that answer your question, Trissa? Great. Okay, another question about verifying the date, which we said USB-E is trying to make the formatting and specifications available. I think that may come back to confirming with Melissa when the new spec is out, but we've been working with her on having this on the spec. And I think that it's on the latest specifications. So I do believe that that should be available here shortly, but I can't confirm the dates. I can post out any specific technical questions on that, like the SIF mapping levels. I can send that to you specifically, Bobby, or anyone else that's interested and shoots me an email. I can change that and just get that specific answer for you quickly. All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll get that for you. The next area that I've got for you is the WIDA screener. Go ahead to the next screen. The WIDA screener, we've gone over this a few times, but just as a recap, because now we're at the point of releasing this information out, that this is the proficiency score, which we're going to be collecting, and the proficiency date. The other information that's going to be available on the data gateway page that I'm going to show on the next slide are essentially able to be determined just by who sent it to us. This is a resource that's going to be available for LEAs to be able to help each other with making sure that WIDA screeners aren't given more than once. So by the LEAs all participating in using these optional fields, these are not going to be fatal, not going to be non-loading. They're optional, but again, it's only as successful as people who use it. So if you populate this data, it'll make it available for other LEAs to be able to see and reference, to be able to know whether or not those students have already taken the screener. And again, that's what our collection is going to be for, is to be able to accomplish that. So again, when would they need to take a screener? That would be if they'd taken the home language survey, and that survey results were then showing that they should be taking the screener. And the screener, again, is an entry level for the WIDA access. Go ahead to the next screen. Where do you find this as an LEA and you're interested to see whether or not your student actually has taken the screener or not? You would go to the student search, you would look them up, and after selecting your student, you would select the assessments tab on the side. And then below where you currently would see the WIDA access scores, that's where you'll see the WIDA screener scores. In this case, kind of visually looks a little bit in reverse. For reference for you, the WIDA access is actually taken after the screener. But that also is indicative for you that after they've also taken the access, that's the one that you want to be able to see first. So that's why we kind of have it stacked in this way, is that before the access, your focus will be the screener. After your access, your focus is going to come back to the access. And as you can see there, we've got the data administered, which is one of the fields that we're collecting. The score, again, one of the fields that we're collecting. And then based on who we received it from, we're then also including that information of who the LEA name and number were where we received that. So that way as well too, if you do need to reach out and question anything about that student's assessment or taking the WIDA screener, you have that opportunity to know who to reach out and contact. And that's what I have. So I think that now it's opening up for any questions on any of the three areas that I've discussed. And if you guys don't have any questions, then I'm going to sneak in a question of my own for you. So since I'm at the end, I get to sneak that in. The question that I would have that I want to present and get some feedback on is if LEAs can see the value in potentially through collections sending us the SSID or initial student information for the next year's registration. As that's something that my team has been discussing, the opportunities and possibilities of trying to offer, not for this current year, as it's a bit too late for that process, but it could be something that we could consider having in place for the next school year, and also potentially aiding in having LEAs not have to figure out who students are on the first day of school, if they've got the right SSIDs, if things match up. And potentially, if we tie in a few extra fields such as grade and things like that, that could allow you to be able to get through the requirements of student not loading a little bit easier, as has been discussed for wanting to have, where we could have more of a minimum viable, minimum required fields to be able to load in, to be able to have your assessments given, instead of what we currently have for the S1 record. So I've got one person that says that they would like that. Does anybody have any concerns or feedback? As this is a new idea that we're tossing around that we feel would have a high value. So further agreeing that that's a good idea. If anybody wants to weigh in on that, or also if anybody wants to potentially set themselves up to have meetings to discuss that with us, our aim would be to have something like this in place by February, when you guys start taking in registrations, that we can also try to give you that immediate feedback at the same time without risking your current rosters. So it would be a new object that was sent on your data collection aside from the S1, and not putting anything else at risk. All right, well, I'll hand things back off. Thank you, everyone. Okay, a written description. That sounds like a wonderful idea. I'll put together an idea post about that, and potentially set up a meeting where anybody who's interested in coming and discussing, call it a focus working group or not, but we can see how that pans out and see if that works. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. If there's nothing else, we will let everyone go. Thanks for coming again. We look forward to seeing all the data come in and get finalized, and thanks everyone for working so hard on clearing fatals and making sure data are accurate. We really appreciate all the work that's being done.
Here's the Beatles.
Oh, and there's Siri starting. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Bye.